Guys, we all see it, and we know if you're doing it. You can't hide it from us. Hey, I get it. I mean, some people probably think they sleep great if they're snoring. I mean, you gotta be in some deep sleep to be making those harmonizing sounds all night. I mean, the only issue really is you're disturbing everyone else around you. But who really cares about them if you're getting great sleep, right? Well, I'm here to tell you that that is completely wrong. If you snore, you are sleeping terrible. And guys, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about this. It is not normal for us to snore. And actually, it's not normal for us to make any sound when we're breathing. We were actually meant to be silent breathers, believe it or not. Humans were meant to use their nose whenever they breathe. And when they use their nose, they're not supposed to make any sound. That's how we know we're getting good quality breaths. Now I know there's a ton of you out there that are gonna say like, hey, I have a deviated septum or some other issue, I have allergies. There's no way I can breathe through my nose. Well, good news for you, I made another video on how you can start breathing through your nose more, especially if your nose is always stuffy. So I'm putting a link to that video in the description below. But I hear you. Sometimes you just can't breathe through your nose. Sometimes you, again, have a deviated septum and you need to get a surgery done so that it can help you open up your airway through your nose. But I'm not here to talk about that in this video. I'm talking specifically about when you're sleeping and specifically about snoring and why that is terrible and why if this is you, if someone tells you that you snore, you should definitely be worried. So let's take it back for a second. Why do we even snore in the first place? Like how come some people sleep so well and they're so silent, they don't disturb anyone else, and some people are just the most annoying people on earth to sleep next to? Well, the reason people snore most of the time is because they have an airway obstruction. So what happens is as they're trying to breathe, something in their upper airway is blocking the air from getting into their lungs, and that's causing a snoring sound. So what could be causing someone's airway to be obstructed? Well, there's a lot of things. You know, one, we have our tonsils that are in the back of our mouth, and if we're breathing through our mouth, that's going to cause some resistance, because if our tonsils are really inflamed and they're really big, you can imagine it's going to be a lot harder to get air from our mouth to our lungs. And also we have our adenoids, which are also back there, and they can also be super inflamed. And this is why you see a lot of people who, as they get older, they say, oh yeah, I had my tonsils removed, I had my adenoids removed when I was younger because I couldn't breathe that well. And the reason is because they had all these tonsil and adenoid infections. Now, going off of that, there is actually a bigger issue here, and that could be contributing to those infections and also contributing to why you are snoring and also contributing to even sleep apnea. Now, that issue is breathing through your mouth. Again, humans were meant to breathe through their nose. There are a whole list of benefits that we get from breathing through our nose that we absolutely do not get when we breathe through our mouth. One, our nose filters out air a lot more than our mouth. Actually, our mouth doesn't filter out any air. So imagine if you're going for a run and it's a really dusty environment and all this like dirt is in the air and you're breathing through your mouth. All that air is going directly into your lungs. Now, if you were to use your nose, well, your nose has these hairs in them, and that can filter out all this dust and all these bigger particles. And also you have this mucus in your nose, and that mucus has these enzymes that can kill all these viruses and bacteria. Actually, you kill about 98 to 99% of viruses and bacteria when you breathe through your nose, which you do not get rid of when you breathe through your mouth. So you're way more likely to get sick when you're a mouth breather. And not only that, when you breathe through your nose, your air goes through these paranasal sinuses. And when your air goes through these paranasal sinuses, your body converts some of this oxygen to nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is really good for our body because, one, it's an antibacterial. So again, it can help keep everything clean. So not only are you already preventing yourself from getting sick because you're filtering out all this dirty air, you're filtering out all these viruses and bacteria, but now you're producing this molecule that is also an antibacterial, and it can fight off infections. And actually, this is a reason why people who are nose breathers are much less likely to get tonsil infections, much less likely to get adenoid infections, and much less likely to need to get them removed. I mean, when you think about it, it's not normal for humans to have to remove some parts of their body in order to live normally. You know, there has to be a reason why we keep getting these tonsil infections, keep getting these adenoid infections, and have to get them removed. So you're starting to get it a little bit. You know, you get all these benefits from breathing through your nose, and if you start doing it at an early age, it can really make a big difference in your life. But also, if you breathe through your nose, you're much less likely to snore. Now, that might not make any sense to you, but I'm gonna explain why. So going back to mouth breathers are really easy to distinguish from nose breathers. And the reason is mouth breathers have a lot of skeletal deformities that a lot of nose breathers do not have. A lot of mouth breathers tend to have these longer, skinnier, narrower faces. They have these constricted jaws. They're more likely to have crooked teeth. They're more likely to have a lot of dental problems like cavities, gum disease, and they're also more likely to have a bad posture. They're more likely to have their head tilted forward. They're more likely to have their shoulders rolled forward. And they just overall don't look as healthy as nose breathers. So why is it that a mouth breather will have all these deformities versus a nose breather? Well, the reason has to do with your tongue, right? And you might be getting a little bit more confused here, but I'm gonna explain it to you in just a second. So when you're a mouth breather, your mouth has to be open, right? There's no way you can breathe through your mouth when your mouth is closed. Also, our tongue is gonna be resting on the bottom of our mouth if we're a mouth breather, because there is no way we can breathe through our mouth if our tongue is resting against the roof of our mouth. And if you don't believe me, you can try it. I'll try it right now. I couldn't do it. So when we're a mouth breather, our mouth is open, our lips are apart, our tongue is on the bottom of our mouth. And that's allowing air to go through our mouth. Now let's compare this to a nose breather. A nose breather typically has their lips that are closed together, and their tongue is resting against the roof of their mouth. So you can see that the real difference in posture here has to do with the tongue, right? Because in the nose breather, their tongue is resting against the roof of their mouth, but in the mouth breather, their tongue is not resting against the roof of their mouth. It's actually down and it's against the floor of the mouth. So if you're a nose breather and your tongue is resting against the roof of the mouth, that's really good, because as you're a kid and your tongue is against the roof of your mouth and your jaw is still developing, that tongue constantly keeping pressure against the roof of your mouth will cause that roof of your mouth to expand. So as the roof of your mouth starts expanding, it'll allow all your teeth to come into the right place because you're allowing more space. But also when that roof of your mouth expands, it's opening up your airway. So later on in life, if you're a nose breather, especially starting at an early age, you're way more likely to have straight teeth and you're way less likely to have breathing issues. Now let's compare this to a mouth breather. Well, your tongue, again, is never resting against the roof of your mouth. You're never giving the roof of your mouth that stimulus to expand. So that's why a lot of mouth breathers have narrower faces, they have these longer faces, and they have these crooked teeth because they don't have room for their teeth to come into the right place. And also, everything is going to be more constricted, right? Because since everything's more narrow, their airway is going to be more narrow, and it's going to be hard for them to breathe as well. And this also influences their posture as well. So again, this has to do with your tongue. So your tongue actually has a lot of different muscles that attach to it. And some of these muscles attach to your jaw, and some of these muscles attach to your neck. So what happens is if your tongue is against the roof of your mouth, it's basically holding your jaw up. It's holding your lower jaw up. Now, if it's not against the roof of your mouth and your jaw is open because your tongue is against the floor of your mouth, that's basically pulling your head forward, right? Because when your jaw is open, all that weight will slowly cause your head to tilt forward. And over time, as your head starts to tilt forward, that's going to start to cause your shoulders to roll forward because all that weight starts to add up more and more. And that's why you see people who later on in life, they have what's called this forward head tilted posture. And that basically looks like this, where their head is tilted forward and they're walking around like this their whole life. Okay, so you can start to see these different deformities that can come just from breathing through your mouth. But what does this have to do with snoring? Well, again, if you are a nose breather, your tongue is resting against the roof of your mouth. So if you're sleeping, your tongue is going to stay resting against the roof of your mouth and your airway is going to be open. Now compare that to a mouth breather. Their mouth is going to be open and their tongue is not going to be against the roof of their mouth. It's actually going to start to fall back towards the back of their mouth. And what can happen is as they are sleeping, their tongue will start to go more and more back towards the back of their mouth, and it can start to constrict that airway. And what happens is as that airway starts to get more and more constricted, their soft palate will start to vibrate. Now, your soft palate is basically the roof of your mouth, but the back part of that. And if you're a nose breather, your tongue is again going to be resting against this and it's not going to be vibrating and you're not going to be snoring. But if you're a mouth breather, your tongue is not resting against this and that's what's causing this to start to vibrate and that's causing that super annoying snoring sound. So you can start to see the issue here, right? Because not only are you being super annoying, you're getting less air and you're getting less oxygen because your airway is constricted. It's harder for you to breathe. Now that's not even the worst part here. So if you're a mouth breather and your tongue is against the back of your mouth, there's a chance that this tongue can go all the way back to the back of your throat and completely cut off your breathing. Now at this point, you're not just snoring, you're not even breathing. And this is when your body will force yourself to wake up and try to take a new breath and go back to sleep. And you should be thankful that your body's doing this, because otherwise you'd be dead, because you wouldn't be breathing. But the issue with this is you're waking up in the middle of the night, and another term for this is called sleep apnea. We have an epidemic going on right now, and it's called bad sleep. And a lot of this has to do with sleep apnea, and a lot of this has to do with bad breathing. And breathing bad and sleep apnea are also related, as you can see how I just described. But a lot of this is going misdiagnosed, and a lot of this is just people not getting a sleep study in general because they think that they're fine. So what are the problems with this? Well, one, we already talked about your airways obstructed, so it's harder for you to get air, it's harder for you to get enough oxygen. Well, when your body's not getting enough oxygen, well, your body's not going to be recovering that well. And no matter how much you sleep, you're still going to wake up tired, your cells are still going to be deprived of oxygen, and you're just not going to be functioning as well as you could be. But also, you're messing up your sleep cycles, because when you are waking up constantly in the middle of the night, especially with someone who has sleep apnea, they never get a full sleep cycle. And your sleep cycles are all very important. It's very important for us to get a full sleep cycle multiple times while we're sleeping, because this is how our body recovers. If we're missing any of our stages of sleep, if we're messing up with our sleep cycles, especially chronically over a long period of time, we're going to have a lot of issues. And this is why we see people who are chronically tired. No matter how much they sleep, they're always tired. They're falling asleep in the middle of the day. For example, look at people who have ADHD. A lot of people who have ADHD and are showing these symptoms of ADHD are showing the same symptoms as people who are simply tired. You know, what are the symptoms of ADHD, right? You are restless, you can't focus, you're like interrupting people, and you're doing all these things. But for someone who's tired that's doing all these things, these are just symptoms of them trying to keep their body awake. They're just doing these things just to help force them to stay awake. So it just makes you wonder, like, all these cases that are getting diagnosed as ADHD, are they really cases of ADHD, or could they just be improved with improving their sleep at home? I am always for improving things at home first before resorting to a pill for the rest of your life. You know, why would you have to take a pill for the rest of your life when someone told you you can just, get a sleep study and see if you have sleep apnea first? If you have sleep apnea and that fixes the cause, you might not even need to take these pills. Now, I'm not saying that ADHD is a fake disease. There has to be a lot more research that goes into this, but I just wish that people would look more into the root causes of things rather than jumping to a solution by taking these pills. Now, we went over a little brief overview of mouth breathing and how that can cause snoring and all the other problems that can be causing. But how do you start breathing through your nose? And if you're a mouth breather, how do you stop that habit? Well, again, it has to do a lot with your tongue, right? Like we talked about. And some people won't be able to do this. Some people have what's called a tongue tie. Now, a tongue tie is basically when your tongue is glued to the floor of your mouth. So the reason is we have this attachment on the bottom of our tongue that attaches it to the floor of the mouth. Well, sometimes this attachment is way too long. And normally, if we're a newborn and they see that we have a tongue tie like this, they'll clip it and it'll be fine for the rest of our life. But sometimes that doesn't happen. So sometimes we see people who are in their teens or in their 20s or even 30s, they have this tongue tie and they can't even put their tongue to the roof of their mouth. Now, in these cases, these people almost have to be mouth breathers because it's so hard for them to keep their mouth closed because their tongue is basically pulling their jaw down. So one simple test you can do is try opening your mouth as wide as you can. If you can fit 3 fingers into your mouth, you don't actually have to put your fingers into your mouth, but if you feel like you can fit 3 fingers in there, then your opening is pretty good, right? So if I open my mouth, that means it's a pretty good opening. Now, try doing the same thing with your tongue against the roof of your mouth. And when your tongue is against the roof of your mouth and you open all the way you can while keeping your tongue against the roof of your mouth, if you can fit 2 fingers in your mouth, I would say that means you're pretty good and you probably won't need any sort of tongue tie surgery, but you should definitely get it evaluated if you are worried about it. This is not a clear-cut rule. But let's say you do not have a tongue tie. Your tongue is completely normal, but you were just a mouth breather. Well, there's a lot of other reasons that could be causing you to be a mouth breather. Sometimes you naturally become a mouth breather when you're a kid because you watch your parents do it. You could have no issues. You could have like no tongue tie, your jaw could be normal, everything could be normal, but you watch your parents as you're a kid and they're always breathing through their mouth, and habitually, you'll start breathing through your mouth too. There are other reasons too that you could be a mouth breather. Actually, there's a lot of other reasons, but this at least gives you an idea. So if you want to break this bad habit of breathing through your mouth and you want to start breathing through your nose again, I'm putting a link in the description below where I go over that and I go over some exercises you can start doing. So make sure you check out the description below and you'll see a couple links in there that should be able to help you out. As always, thank you guys for watching. I hope you liked that video, and if you haven't already, hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel below. I will see you in the next video.